All right, this is the Big Douglas Show. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So hop in, tell us what you think. Rapper Big Pooh is in the co-host chair, and our special guest today is Jim Nagy, the Executive Director of the Senior Bowl. Jim, thank you for giving us some time today.
Yeah, good to be on, guys.
Thank you. 2018, you took over the Senior Bowl. I'm curious what you were hoping the direction that it would go, and also I'm curious. With the portal and maybe guys staying around later, has it affected the way you look at the Senior Bowl?
No, I mean, I think so far, 4 years in, 4 game cycles in, we've accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. Really proud of our staff and the football guys, the scouts we brought on over the last 4 years have done a great job. The portal and NIL, all that stuff hasn't affected us too much. I mean, it's more difficult to track players right now. These guys are. Even between now and August, they're going to be changing teams. So just identifying where these guys are heading into the fall is probably the most difficult thing. But we've got a couple outside groups that are on top of this portal stuff for us and help us out. So hadn't been too big of an issue.
Jim, how much has COVID kind of changed the way you guys operate over at the Senior Bowl?
Well, 2 years ago, we were able to have our game. During really the height of COVID. So, that's something that, take a lot of pride in because, a lot of people were just shutting down and we were pretty steadfast about having our game. I just know I looked at it from an NFL general manager's perspective. I mean, I can't imagine doing their job without ever getting face to face with these players, and through that COVID year, these GMs didn't see any players. In order for them to be a part of their team's bubble, if they wanted to be with their team on Sundays, which all these GMs are, it was impossible for them to go out to games on Saturdays and see players. So had we not had the Senior Bowl that year, you would have had a draft class where GMs didn't see any of the guys they were drafting. They wouldn't have gotten face-to-face interviews with any of the guys they were drafting. And that's just not that's not good. So, we put a lot of protocols in place. We had a really, really tight bubble. And we had one positive test out of 3,600 plus tests during the week. So it obviously worked. So we take a lot of pride in that we were able to have it. This year's game, Omicron was kind of spiking around the time of our game. And we kept a lot of same things in place and didn't have any issues. So it's definitely created challenges, man. It hasn't been boring by any means. In the 4 years we've been here, we've had a lot of challenges. But no, hopefully going forward, we're mostly through that.
Jim, I'm curious, how many scouts do you have on staff there helping you break down the players, and what do you kind of look for in who you invite into the game?
Yeah, we had this year we had 10 guys on the football staff. So we had 2 scouting assistants full time. We had our director of football operations. Then we had 7 area scouts. So those guys, the way we've kind of built this thing, our road scouts are guys all guys with former NFL experience. I say guys and gals. Kathleen Wood was part of our staff a couple of years ago, and now she's an area scout for the Cleveland Browns. But no, it's just we need experienced eyes. We need people connected. We can't be in a school every day. We don't have the budget that these NFL teams do. So to have guys that have worked in the league, they know other scouts, they can get people at schools on the phone and get information and get out to games on Saturdays and connect with these coaches and see these players live. Is critical. So that's been fun. It's been fun building a football staff. We've never really had that here at the Senior Bowl. No, it's been, and we'll regroup. We'll have another group on the road this fall, probably a new set of guys. That's kind of how we've done it every year. We've already had a couple guys from this year's crew bounce back and get jobs in the NFL just in this short window after our game leading up to the draft. We've had a number of those guys, and Kathleen as well. Get jobs back in the league. So that's really what we created this for, is kind of have a soft landing spot for the guys. So in terms of what we look for, same thing the teams do. It's probably a little easier in an all-star game because you're looking more broad-based. You're not, honed in on one scheme or particular fit for a club. So it opens us up to all the players. So again, we're just looking for the highest upside guys, and really at the end of the day, the players the teams want to see. I've said it a million times. Our rosters are for these teams, not for anything we do here in Mobile. It's for these guys, for these 32 NFL teams, and all these GMs to help make their decisions.
Jim, I know the game is important, but how much emphasis is placed on the practices? That's something that I know a lot of team scouts and obviously the coaches that coach the teams, they work with the players all week. But how much do they weigh the practices versus the actual game?
It's all a big part of it. I think that's the biggest misconception, is that the game isn't important. And I don't know if that's because people, the media sees that most of the NFL teams leave during the week, and we had 16 teams stay for the game this year. But I'll tell you this, from being in draft rooms for as long as I was, there's no tape in the league that gets worn out more than the Senior Bowl game tape. So it is important. You look at Perrion Winfrey, what he did in the game. I mean, he's going to make millions of dollars off that game performance, millions, not just thousands. But so the game, but it's all important. It's the interviews are important. It's the interactions. Any interaction during the week is important for these guys. So they know that going in. We talk about it at orientation. They're being evaluated every minute of the day. They're down here. So the nice thing is we've kind of created some pockets of time where they're not exposed to the NFL teams. It's different from the past. COVID kind of, created a chance for us to step back and evaluate the whole week. So the hotel is basically a sanctuary for them now. The teams aren't allowed on the player level at the hotel anymore. That used to be a zoo. It was kind of chaos between agents and NFL teams and financial people. Like these guys couldn't get from the elevator to breakfast in the morning without a scout jumping on their back for an interview or what have you. So we've cut that out of the week. The guys now have a chance to relax a little bit, but to me, it's all a big puzzle. It's all important. But yeah, the practice is certainly, especially like the one-on-one periods, the one-on-one competitive periods are really key. Because I think those periods really show a window into a guy's football makeup, his personal makeup. It really kind of shows who the player is.
Is it important as the game becomes, I don't know, faster, that the positions that they get grouped in with? I was thinking of like D ends and D tackles, or safeties that play more linebacker, with the nickel. Is it tight ends that block compared to receiving? Is it time that we start readjusting how we label these guys?
Well, I think for us, I frankly don't care how everyone else labels these players. What's important is how the teams gauge the position flexibility. So, like Perrion Winfrey is a great example. He wasn't asked to play to his skill set really at Oklahoma. And again, that's no shot at the Oklahoma staff. They had to use Perrion the way they had to use him. But seeing him down here playing more of a 3 technique, and getting upfield and being disruptive, really, Perrion got to show who he was. If that's taken a safety like a JoJo Doman, really JoJo played almost like a big nickel at Nebraska, but letting him play more stacked linebacker, which he's going to have to play in the NFL. I mean, that's the value of all-star games, is to show these players versatility, show maybe what they weren't able to show on college tape. So again, to me, it's not what we label them going into the week. It's how the teams view them coming out of the week. That's the most important thing.
There's obviously thousands of seniors every year throughout college. Obviously, we know the top guys or the top seniors, but how do you go about kind of trying to figure out what guys you want? Not necessarily positions, how many each position, but which guys you want to bring in, or what type of guys you want to bring in for the Senior Bowl.
Are you talking about what's our starting point on these guys?
Yes.
How do we filter it down? Yeah. So we'll, for the FBS level guys, we'll watch all the senior starters and contributors that have come back. Like if a guy was a third corner, a third receiver, if he got significant play time his junior year, or if he was injured his junior year, we'll go back to the year before. But that's kind of our baseline with all the FBS guys. For lower division guys, we start with all American teams, all conference teams. And then with some of the smaller school guys, that's just based on my relationships in 20 years in the league. Like Quinn Miners at Wisconsin Whitewater, there's no way that we would have dug Quinn Miners out of a Division III program in Wisconsin without a scouting buddy of mine calling us and giving us a heads up on the player. So a lot of it's just relationships too, but that's kind of our baseline starting point for all these guys. They all get looked at. I can say that. I'll say this too, like we take a lot of pride. Like we watch the tape, all-star games didn't have tape before we got to the Senior Bowl 4 years ago. That was me calling the league office saying, how do we get the tape? And they were like, well, how have the all-star games done it before? And I told I don't know how they've done it before. I only know one way to do it though. And that's to watch the tape. So if any player out there feels like they're not getting looked at, I promise you are. Nobody falls under the radar anymore. We're watching you. If you're on the NFL's radar, you're on the Senior Bowl's radar. So all these guys are being watched and evaluated.
All right. Well, it's a Commanders Forward podcast, so let's get into some guys. It's interesting. I had planned on doing a lot of quarterback talk, but they kind of filled that position now. Where they're also a Senior Bowl guy. Just because they went there doesn't necessarily mean they won't go quarterback at 11. What did you think of the quarterbacks that were at the Senior Bowl, and maybe a couple that you thought fit in well with what Washington likes to do?
Yeah, that's a hard question for me because I don't watch a lot of NFL stuff anymore, guys. I got to be real honest.
Okay.
Like scheme-wise, I have a hard time keeping up with what everyone's doing because I'm so focused on, well, like you said, watching thousands of college players. And it's a year-round process. We're already on the 2023. We've already watched the entire Big Ten. We've already watched the entire Big 12, and we're finishing up SEC right now. So particular to the Commanders there, scheme-wise, I'm not sure. I think all of our quarterbacks had moments during the week. I think Malik Willis kind of showed what he is, in terms of the upside of the player, and just he showed off his legs and his athletic ability in the game. He showed off his arm strength and, a couple of the inclement weather day on Wednesday in the rain. I thought a lot of them showed out in the game. Desmond Ridder threw a couple touchdowns. He had a really steady week. He was probably the most consistent of all the guys. Kenny Pickett was great in the game. He was flawless. He completed everything in the game. I thought Kenny had a really strong week. So, I think all those guys did something during the week to kind of solidify where teams had them. I think we had 6 of the top 7 guys in the draft this year, minus Matty Corral, and he wasn't eligible to play in the game. But there were some good options. It'll be interesting to see how many go in the first round. I think probably 4 or 5 of those guys still could.
That's what I was going to ask you about the quarterbacks, not necessarily where they fit, but do you think that the media is saying that this class isn't as strong as the previous class, obviously, but do you think that we are underestimating the quarterbacks in this class? Because they may not have the higher ceilings as we expect some of the ones that got drafted last year to have.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like the last couple of years to me, like Joe Burrow was a true franchise quarterback. I thought Justin Herbert was a true franchise quarterback. So many of these guys aren't slam dunks. I mean, just look in the last 3 or 4. Your guy Dwayne Haskins. 3 years ago at this time, everybody thought Dwayne Haskins was going to be a slam dunk franchise quarterback, and now he's in Pittsburgh. So, this stuff, what we're talking about here in the pre-draft process, it remains to be seen. But in terms of like where teams have graded this year's class to last year, yeah, last year's class was certainly graded higher across the board than this year's group is. But I think there's going to be 2 or 3 guys out of last year that end up being really good starters. I think Mac Jones is already in that category. I think he's, head and shoulders of where those other guys are right now in his development. And then, with this year's class, I think there's going to be at least a couple of them, but they're all not going to hit. History shows that. But, if you're just looking where teams have them graded, this year's class isn't last year's class, all those guys were in the top 15 when it all shook out. That's how it played out. I don't know if this year's class, I don't think 5 guys are going to go in the top 15, but I think there's going to be a couple quality starters come out of this group.
When I ask around about linebackers for Commanders who pick around 47, the name Chad Muma continues to come up. I was wondering if you talk about him for just a little bit.
Yeah, as it should. I don't think Chad's going to make it there. Honestly, I don't think he's going to make it to 47 just based off the feedback I'm getting from guys in the league. I'm looking at the board right now. We've got Chad way higher than where 47 is, but jumping 40 inches at the combine helps him. He's a guy that can run. He's got a great nose for the football. He's a 3-down player. He can play on 3rd down. I know Cole Holcomb's did some good stuff there for the Commanders over the last few years. I think what's going to help Chad when it's all said and done is the success of Logan Wilson in Cincinnati. A guy that he played with at Wyoming. Logan's on the way to being one of the best linebackers in football. You saw what he did in the Super Bowl. He had 5 picks during the regular season, and he went in the top of the 3rd. I think Chad's going to end up probably going somewhere in the top half of the 2nd. So I don't know if he gets to 47. I think it could be close. But a really good player, man. Made a big jump on our board from junior to senior tape, which is always a great indicator of a guy that is still an ascending player. We liked him last spring. We didn't have quite the love for him we do now. We early in the year we had a scout go to his Northern Illinois game on the road, and that was early in the year, like week 1, week 2, and we really had a lot of fun watching Chad here in the office. He's going to be a really good pro. He's going to be a 3-down starter right away.
Jim, can you name a player too that may not, the people may not be talking about right now, but you think is going to surprise a lot of people when they get to the league, or surprise people where they go in the draft?
Yeah, I think you can stay at linebacker with Demarco Jackson from App State. I haven't seen barely any buzz on Demarco. I love the way the guy plays. Super instinctive, violent downhill player. Ran 4.50 at the combine, which is faster than a lot of people probably thought. But when you watch his sideline to sideline range on tape, it shouldn't be much of a surprise. Similar to Muma, man, he sees it. He sees it quick. He pulls the trigger, plays with a ton of intensity. The speed allows him to play on 3rd down. I think Chad's probably a little better mover than Demarco. But Demarco running seams with tight ends and everything, he has the speed to match that. So to me, just based off like post Senior Bowl, post combine buzz, I'm really kind of shocked that Demarco isn't getting more love. Sorry, I'm kind of looking away from the camera right now, but just
I understand.
Scanning the board right now of guys that I think Bo Melton from Rutgers, the receiver, is a guy that we've really liked. I think what we love what he does with the ball in his hands. We love his physicality, his competitiveness. I think he's a guy that if you're creative with him, again, I hate even throwing out Debo's name with anyone anymore, because Debo's a top 5 playmaker in the league right now. But Bo Melton's got more playmaking ability than I think he was able to show at Rutgers. He had a phenomenal combine, running 4.35 or 4.36, whatever he did. He ran some routes during Senior Bowl week that made some guys look silly. So to have that type of explosive slot playmaker, and I still don't see a lot of talk about Bo Melton. I think he's going to far surpass where I think he's going to get drafted a lot higher than what you're seeing a lot out there in the media right now.
What about Sterling Weatherford as kind of one of those tweener safety linebackers?
Yeah, so Sterling, he's very comparable numbers-wise to where Jeremy Chin was a couple years ago out of Southern Illinois. And, all Jeremy did was he was the runner-up for, Defensive Rookie of the Year 2 years ago. So, Jeremy went in the 2nd round. I don't think Sterling's going to, go around that level. Huge combine snub, in my opinion. The guy that's he's too athletic. The difference between he and Jeremy is like Sterling played a lot of high coverage. They played a lot of 2-deep stuff, and you saw him play on the hash and a line deep. I think, his adjustment to our week was being more down as a full-time box player. You saw him rush a little bit. You saw him in tight, one-on-one on some tight ends, some man coverage stuff. So to me, 6'4", 220-some pounds, almost 230 pounds, tested well the other day. His numbers across the board were like consistent with Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame. Again, not the same level of player of Kyle Hamilton, but are you taking Kyle Hamilton in the top 10? If you're taking him in the top 10, Sterling Weatherford shouldn't get out of the 4th round. To me, he's a guy that you draft. You're getting a core special teams player. You got a guy that has the upside to be a cool piece in sub downs, is like a dime backer. And then just see where the base down stuff goes. Can he get physical enough to be an every down linebacker? But at minimum, you've got a core special teams guy and a guy with coverage upside. So, I think Sterling's a really cool player. I think his upside, his best football is way out in front of him.
Nice.
Let's do this. Because I know you're busy, man. Let me just run through some names and get your opinions on them. Jalen Petrie.
Love him. Yeah, he's a baller, man. He's one of our favorite guys. He's just another guy that he played kind of that apex down in the box position, but aggressive downhill player, really disruptive behind the line of scrimmage, a lot of burst. Just has a lot of playmaker to him. So guys like Buda Baker, Tyron Matt, guys that are. There's been some guys come before him that I think are going to help Jalen's projection of what he is as a player. Again, he's all about football, man. He's a leader. He's a live wire. Guys feed off him. Like, to me, if I'm a GM, that's a guy I want on my football team. So where he goes, I think that's probably going to be second round, somewhere on day 2 for sure. I don't think he gets out of the third. He just brings too much to the table. But just too instinctive, man. Too instinctive, makes too many plays to get out of day 2. Just love the football player.
Troy Anderson.
Yep. There's always a couple guys that come down in Mobile that even surprised me, kind of surpassed my expectations. Troy falls into that category. You saw a guy on tape that I personally question the instincts. He's only a 2-year guy at linebacker, and some of that you can chalk up to inexperience. So I wasn't like, we weren't killing him for his instincts, but he came down here, man. Like, his reactions were better than I ever saw in Montana State tape. The speed showed up in person. It's one thing. He looked fast on tape now. But seeing him down here live, I mean, that you could feel the speed. And then he goes to Indy, and I know officially he was like 4.43 at 240 some pounds. I mean, I had him 4.37. I had him 4.37, 4.38. So you're talking about high end traits. A guy that's got maybe the coolest football resume in this draft. Playing on offense for a couple of years and being all conference at running back, being conference player of the year at quarterback. I mean, this dude's football background is ridiculous. So again, you look at where he came just through this process, having a great Senior Bowl, showed out in the game, showed out in practice, goes to the combine, blows it away. There's the chance he's a top 50 player now.
Channing Tindall kind of got lost on that defense, but he could play. Yeah, do you see him playing middle full-time in the NFL?
Yeah, absolutely. When Channing got here, I talked to he and Devontae Wyatt both. I said, guys, this is your week. This is a time for you to make a name for yourselves because you did get lumped in. We all talked about like the Georgia front 7, right? Like, it was that whole group got talked about collectively. So Channing ran. I put something out on Twitter this fall that Channing was going to run 4.47, and thank God he made me look semi-smart. He ran 4.47. So, but yeah, his ability to diagnose and get to the football, it's hard to find. And he's physical. Like, he plays bigger than he is. Whatever Channing was in the 230 somewhere, he plays bigger on contact than that. He's got some real strike and thump to him. And just his ability to get sideline to sideline. I mean, teams put a premium on that. Speed is at a premium. He's got it. Again, a guy that, going into this year is never really a full-time starter there. And I think that, I don't think he gets out of day 2. It'll be interesting to see how high he goes, but I think he goes in the second round. I think we're going to see a big run in the second round on linebackers. I think all the guys we've talked about, Muma, Troy Anderson, Channing, I think all these guys end up somewhere in the second. But big Channing Tindall fan, man. He's fun to watch.
And the last one I was curious about is Kadeem Maze.
Yep, Cade's another really versatile guy. I think that's going to be his calling card. Cade's one of those guys, to me, probably an early day 3 guy. But he's big. He plays square. He can play guard. He played center during our week. I think he played a little center in college, but, seeing him down here doing it full time, that might be his best home. Teams that like to play with bigger bodied centers, I think Cade's that guy. And I think he can get you out of a pinch at right tackle. So I think he can play 4 spots. He's played a ton of football in the SEC. Those guys make it in the league. Those guys play, like Jamari Salyer at Georgia. I mean, those guys that can play a bunch of different spots, have played big boy football, smart, competitive, tough. To me, Cade's going to play a long time. He's one of those guys that might be an early day 3 guy, but then, 5 or 6 years down the road, you're like, man, that was a great value pick. We just got a long-term starter in the 4th round. So, Cade did a nice job. Got better all week, really. He really did. He's one of those guys that kind of built on every day.
Jim, man, cannot live off football alone. What is it that you do when the when you're taking some time down from grinding film?
Whatever the family's doing, whatever the kids are doing sports wise. My daughter's playing track. My son just finished up basketball, and he's going to just be lifting for football here for the rest of the summer. But just family stuff. Like to get away. I'm from the state of Michigan, so I like to get back up there a little bit, see the folks, and get back home a little bit. But don't have too many hobbies, man. I picked up golf a little bit since I've taken this job. Had no time to golf when I was. You couldn't justify coming home off a 3-week road trip as an NFL scout and telling your wife you're going to go play golf for 6 hours. So I squeeze in a little more of that now that I have this role. But no, man, it's usually just family time.
Nice. Does your son watch tape with you sometime?
He does. Yeah, he's a free safety, high school free safety. So he just finished up his junior year, got one more year left. Yeah, he does. Since the time he was little. He does. It's fun, man. It's fun. He has his favorites. Lewis Scene's his favorite guy in this year's draft, the safety from Georgia.
He's flying up boards, right? I mean,
he is. Yeah, Lewis Scene's a guy that he's really like. I didn't read because he's a junior. Right. I haven't talked to many teams about him, and then getting to the combine and really getting to talk to a lot of my guys. I mean, the league sees Lewis Scene, I think, higher than where the media is at with him right now, and I kind of made that point leaving the combine. He's kind of skyrocketing right now.
Real quickly on the last one, you were mentioning multiple sports. For the parents watching, I always am surprised by this. There's an ability to play football year round now, but how important is it for these guys to play basketball or baseball? It always feels like the best of the guys that get to the league were multiple sports stars.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in it. I really am. Back to my last job in Seattle, that was Coach Carroll's first question he asked of any player we brought into an interview. He's like, all right, man, tell me about high school. What'd you do? Where'd you play? What positions? That's critical. I just think from just an overall coordination, I think awareness too. Like when you get a guy that's been on a basketball court or a hockey rink, and there's all these other moving parts. So I think there's applications to any sport, whether it's baseball, track and fly balls, for DBs. I mean, I think there's a ton of carryover. I just like that, and I think from a teammate's perspective, all these teams have all these locker rooms have a different composition to them. So like my son grew up playing AAU basketball, but also travel baseball. If either of you have been to a travel baseball weekend in Louisiana or an AAU basketball tournament in Atlanta, that's two different demographic groups, right? Like, sure. So you just learn to mesh with different people. That's what life's all about. That's what a locker room's all about. I think football is different. Like that football is really a melting pot. So you're talking about a football locker room. I think not just so on the field, there's great carryover, but there's great carryover to the locker room too, man. Like playing the other sports, you just learn to deal with different kinds of people and be in different environments. So I would encourage any parent to have your kid play multiple sports. I know the teams look. I know the teams look into it and factor it.
Nice.
What a beautiful way to end the segment. Jim, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on. I'm glad I got a chance to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right, guys.
All right.